Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Rab, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to give a little introduction. Rab Eli Deutch lives in the old city of Jerusalem. We had the privilege to learn with him there, and we really admire his work. He receives thousands of people for Shabbat, and he teaches birthright groups. He teaches Areish also, and also online with different groups around the world. Rabbi Deutsch brings lofty concepts and spiritual concepts from Kabbalah and from Hasidut down to a language that we can understand, and we're so honored and privileged to have you, Rab. I'm going to give the word to Rabbi Moshe Toshie, and welcome all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yoshua, for organizing this speech. And I had the privilege to know you, Rabbi Eli, last year at the old city, and your kindness, your humility was one of the things that it's so special of you. And we're very excited to have you here in a speech and Zoom. Hopefully we could have you here in Mexico City. And the title we're going to speak about, it's mindfulness, approach in Judaism about mindfulness. So we want you to speak about that theme, and then to open to, if somebody has any questions, anything that they want to know more deeply, so they could feel free to write in the chat, or if they want to ask live, it's also possible. So any further ado, we want to thank you so much and give you the word.
Okay, shalom, shalom. You guys can hear me all right? Okay, perfect. Okay, awesome. All right, good. So firstly, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm super happy to be here. And, with the, of course, we hope that the whole Corona situation gets cleared up right away. Hopefully some of the good things that came with it, though, can hopefully stick around. Things like this, being able to, the whole Zoom thing, I think, has opened up some certain doors. And I think that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And hopefully we'll find some way to incorporate this into our lives, God willing, going forward. So it's super awesome for me to be able to be here talking to you about this, and such an important topic and relevant topic that, because when we get to incorporate some of these ideas of mindfulness into our lives, it really switches up the type of people we are. And so we'll talk a little bit about mindfulness. We'll talk a little bit about how we also see that this is something that is at really the underpinnings of Judaism as well, right? And maybe let's jump in right there. Where do we find these ideas in Judaism? So we see actually, we find them right at the beginning with the father of the Jewish people, the original Jew, Abraham, okay? Abraham comes along, the first thing the Torah that says that God said to Abe was, Lech lecha mi'artecha v'nadticha mi'beit avicha el haaretz asher araka, right? The first thing he says is, Abraham, listen, Lech lecha, go to you. That's literally what it means, go to you. And he says, if you want to go to the reality of who you are, if you want to go to your potential, right? After all, we know Abraham's that spiritual journeyer, that explorer, that out-of-the-box thinker. One of the words we call Abraham in Hebrew is Ivri, which literally means, it's usually translated as the Hebrew, but literally it's from the word in Hebrew is Aver. It's on the other side. That the whole world was on one side in their belief system. Abraham was able to get outside of that constriction, get outside of that way of thinking, and have a totally different perspective on life because he was able to get outside of himself, right? And so we see that this is the first thing that God says to Abe is, Lech lecha, if you want to go to the reality of who you are, he says, I'm going to lay down a 3-point plan in order for you to get there, or at least a 3-point plan as the prerequisite for you going in that direction. And that is, means that if you want to go to the reality of who you are, prerequisite, what you must do first, the introduction to that, is you have to leave from your land, from your birthplace, and from your parents' house. Now, can you hear the idea that when God says that to Abe, can you hear the idea we're not just talking about the physical location where he's standing, right? What he's talking about on a deeper level is that you have to get, let's start with the first one, your land. Can you hear the idea that your land doesn't just mean your physical location, but it means the energy of your land, the atmosphere, the mentality, the culture. There are certain philosophies that your land has. There are certain, there's different ways of thinking. There's certain patterns of behavior, right? If you want to be that spiritual searcher, Abraham, if you want to be someone who's blazing a trail, if you want to truly be a free thinker, if you want to go to your personal potential, you must be able to go ahead and step outside of the culture, step outside of your cultural beliefs, step outside of the patterns that the culture has put into your mind and into your heart. Right? Next, it says that to leave to leave from your birthplace. What does that mean? What does that mean, your birthplace? It means that the place that you're born, those genes, right? The biology that you come along with, to be able to step outside of that, right? And so this is obviously super important, which is wild, because it means to say that we have certain genetic predispositions, right? But it's important to recognize that they're predispositions, not predeterminations. I mean to say we have a certain desire, either physically or emotionally, to go in a particular direction. But if you want to be a free thinker, and this is what mindfulness is speaking to, right? To be able to step outside of your pattern, step outside of your genetic predisposition, step outside of where, what we said before, society has plugged into your mind as the autopilot, right? If you want to be able to go ahead and live freer and higher and more refined, it means we get outside of our nature. It means to say that we take our nature, it means we're born with the first nature, but we need to step outside of that and build ourselves a new choice-based second nature, right? And the last one it says there is to leave from your parents' house, meaning to say that we all have certain things that we took in from our parents' house, right? Before we said something about the culture, and that's the culture in mass, that's on one level, but in terms of how we respond within relationship, within give and take, within our close quarters of our homes, we have a certain autopilot for that. And we also have certain expectations based on how we were raised. And we have certain things about how we look at if we're in a difficult situation, or if we're in a situation of conflict, what responses did we see used when we were growing up? That becomes our go-to, right? And so first idea is to step, if you want to be a free thinker, if you want to be a spiritual searcher, if you want to be explorer, if you want to be going on a journey in life, it means taking a step out of that, right? Matter of fact, I once saw a similar thing. I once saw in America, there are these talk shows at night. I'm assuming they have them in Mexico also. There are these talk shows late at night. They're on 11:30 at night. And once there was one of these talk show hosts came on, and he said, guys, tomorrow is Halloween. Right? He said, tomorrow's Halloween. Here's what I want you to do. He says, when your kids come home from trick or treating, afterwards, they're going to go to sleep. When they go to sleep, go to where they put their candy, steal their candy, hide it. And then tomorrow morning, when they come looking for it, and they can't find it, they're going to ask you for it. And you should tell them that you ate it. Right? And then video record the response and send it to us. Right? And so sure enough, a few days later, this talk show host came on, and he had a collage, and maybe you saw this, I know some people probably saw this, and he had a kind of a collage of just a bunch of videos that were put together from this whole thing that happened. And pretty much all the kids cry, right? But then there's one kid who throws things across the room, another kid's banging his fist on the table, another one's knocking his head against the wall. But then there was this one girl who sat down across from her mother and starts talking about her feelings. But Mom, why did you do that? Didn't you know how it would make me feel? Right? So when the audience sees that at first, they laugh, right? But all we have to do is take a step back and start thinking, like, scratch the surface a little bit and say, hold on a second. Why is it that one person laughs, one person throws things across the room, another person's yelling, where does this come from, right? Can you hear the idea that 80% of the time, right, approximately, maybe 70%, let's say 70 to 90, yeah? The reason why they're reacting the way they are is because that's what they saw in their house, right? That's what they saw modeled for them. That we are so ingrained, our emotional responses and how we respond, especially in relationships, is so ingrained by the way the dynamic dance we had in our parents' home, right? And so if we want to go on a personal journey of growth and self-exploration and self-discovery and self-expression to our personal potential, it entails us first and foremost stepping outside of those patterns, gaining a space of consciousness, right? Very well known that there was one of the great self-help gurus. His name's Stephen Covey, wrote the book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So he said that the measure of a person is based on the space that they could put between stimulus and response. Something happens to you. Do you just react automatically? Do you just respond the way whatever comes up to you, just as respond with it? Or are you able to take a step back, free yourself from yourself, and say, hold on a second, what kind of person do I want to be? I know this person did something to me. What kind of person do I want to be? Right? And when we are mindful in that manner, right, we become much more empowered to be the people that we want to be, right? Because without that, we're allowing other people and their actions and their attitudes to define what we do. If what I'm doing is totally based on what other people are doing or the way other people treat me, so then where's the me in the situation? Where is the expression of the I in that situation? Right? Can you hear the idea? It's pretty much non-existent. I become like a computer program, put in a bunch of stuff that happens to me, and then I output a response. But where's the me? Right? And so what Judaism is saying, well, the first thing God says to Abe is, listen, you want to go on the personal journey, you want to go to the quote unquote land that I'm going to show you. If you want to go to your personal promised land, prerequisite for that, the first thing you need to do for that is to free yourself from yourself, to free yourself, to leave from your land, your birthplace, and your parents' house, from your culture, from your genetic predispositions, and from the mentality of your household. Only then can we actually go ahead and take the next step, right? And so this is how the Jewish people begin as a family, as one individual, Abraham. But how do we see this play out further in the Jewish nation? So answer is also right at the beginning. Right at the beginning of the story we hear when the Jewish people go from becoming a family to becoming a nation, we see the same exact, more or less the same exact thing. We find the Jewish people, when did the Jewish people become a nation? When they leave Egypt, right? When they leave Egypt, it's considered that they had a nation, right? But what's going on in Egypt? Let's understand it for a second. What's going on in Egypt? Egypt, how do you say Egypt in Hebrew? Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is from the Hebrew word meitzarim, which means boundaries, borders, constrictions, that which is holding us back. And so it means to say, when we read the Torah, by the way, we're not just reading a history book, right? We're learning from some Jewish history in there, but that's a bonus. What it's really all about, the word Torah, is from the Hebrew word Morah, which means teachings, right? Which means to say it's teachings for life. It's a spiritual self-help book. And so when we're hearing the story about the Jewish people in Egypt, first thing we have to recognize is, okay, that's nice that we're hearing history, but hold on, what does that mean to me? Can I internalize this story in my own life, right? And so for example, it means to say that we all have our own personal Egypts. We have our own personal boundaries, borders, constrictions, things that are holding us back, right? And the first thing we need to, if we want to get out of that, right, we find that with the Jewish people, we find exactly that's what happens with the Jewish people. Jewish people go from a place of constriction and borders and boundaries, and now which is holding us back, and then they get out of there. As soon as they bust out of Egypt, where do they go? They go to the desert, right? What's in the desert? Nothing. That's exactly the point. Because we all have these Egypts and these ways of thinking in our life, the ways our parents spoke to us, and that set us up in a certain mindset. And then we perpetuated that because the way our parents speak to us becomes our inner voice. And that became our pattern. And that from that pattern became a certain characteristic. And from those characteristics becomes our personality. And then we're walking around as a repeat of a program that was put into us by our nature and by our nurture, right? And the point is, if I want to get it, the point is that what mindfulness is all about is about stepping outside of that, is about becoming conscious, living with in a state of self-awareness, being able to constantly be in two places at once, in reality, in this moment, in the moment, and also beyond the moment, in the circumstance, but beyond the circumstance, right? And so this is the same story with us, right? So the idea is to break out of our own personal Egypts, and then we come to our personal place of desert, our personal place of nothingness, of openness, of true openness, true open-mindedness, the true capacity to go ahead and actually consider other alternatives in a real and authentic way. Perhaps this is why one of the reasons why the Jewish people got the Torah at Mount Sinai, because it was in the desert. That's where they got the Torah. Right? Because only to the extent we open ourselves up and make ourselves desert-like, only to that extent can we truly receive any new piece of information, right? And so this is really the roots of how we see this concept of mindfulness straight out and clearly in the Jewish picture. And so what does this mean for us, right? First and foremost, we find that in other belief systems, the buck stops over here. That other belief systems will talk about these ideas about getting outside of yourself, getting outside of your ego. And then that becomes the goal. However, what Judaism wants to say is, yes, incorporate that, but then say, okay, now that I have become free from myself, free from my situation, free from the autopilot that I was raised with, okay, now what am I going to be free for, right? And so Judaism goes ahead and wants to take this to the next step, take this to the next level and say, okay, what am I going to be free for? I don't want to go too much into that because that's not really our topic in the conversation right at this moment. But I do want to recognize that the next, there is an aspect, right? What we're really getting at here is the Jewish teaching that derech eretz kadma leTorah, that there's an idea in Judaism that being a human being precedes and is kind of like the foundations for being a Jew, right? And what do we mean by being a human being? What we mean by being a human being is being choice-based, right? The way Judaism looks at it is that animal living means, and we all have this within ourselves, right? We all have physical bodies, just like an animal has a physical body. So we all have this. But animal living means that whatever my instinct is, whatever my inclination is, whatever my emotional response is, I'm stuck in that. I can't get outside of that. And I just do whatever that feeling leads me to do. And there's no aspect of higher free will choice, right? Human living means being able to step outside of that. Where do we see this? By the way, we see this in Hebrew in the words for animal and for human being, right? Animal in Hebrew is behema. Behema breaks down to ba-ma. In it, what is there? A rhetorical question, meaning to say there's nothing more than what you see. What you see is what you get. You see a physical animal there, standing there, and its physicality, that's what it has. It has whatever its responses are, physically, emotionally, whatever its responses are, that's what it is. It doesn't have some higher potential to get outside of itself. It's choose some higher moral choice, right? However, a person is not like that. A person, the word in Hebrew is Adam. Adam is Aleph, Dam. Dam in Hebrew is blood. And Aleph in Hebrew, what's Aleph in Hebrew? In Judaism, Aleph is one. What's one in Judaism? God, right? And so this is what a person is, Aleph, Dam. It's a Dam, blood, flesh of blood, with an Aleph, with a spark of godliness, with the soul. And the idea is to assert the Aleph over the Dam, right? That the Dam should be working for the Aleph, right? That we have a physical body, we recognize it, we validate it, we don't deny it forever, right? That's not the way. The way is to give it its validation, give it its space, but also we don't let it take over the show. We don't let it run things. We give it its space. So it's just like a child, right? A kid, if you try to get the kid to act exactly the way you want and sit like this at the table and listen to every little thing and move around like a robot, that's gonna, if you're successful, that's gonna be even worse for the kid probably in the long run, right? But that's not our goal, right? We can't do that. That doesn't work. We need to give that kid space to run around, to go a little bit crazy. That's totally fine and wonderful. But we don't let it start making all the decisions about the household. We don't start capitulating to the child all the time, right? That we don't do. We give it its space. We let it have its moment, but we don't let it take over the show, right? And similarly, this is how in our own lives, this is how we have to deal with ourselves, with our emotions and our emotional responses, right? That means to say that if I have a certain emotional response, if let's say I get angry all the time, whatever, let's say even better, let's say I have whatever, whether it be angry, whether it be depressed, whether it be I have a sense of self-loathing. We don't say, okay, this is a negative behavior, therefore I'm never going to do it again. It's not realistic, right? It's not realistic. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So what do? We have to go ahead and give it its space in order to exist. And then the rest of the time, we say, hold on, I'm going to give you your space. Don't worry. Right? So let me give you an example of what I mean. Imagine you have a person who has a little bit of a bad self-image. Maybe they had a tough background, were raised in a tough way, or maybe they even had some trauma or abuse when they were a kid. And so they have a sense of self-loathing, right? They like to just really berate themselves, really just say terrible things to themselves about themselves. And so if you try to tell them, listen, you know it's bad for you. I know it's bad for you. Never do it. Let's just say from now on, we're never going to do it again. That doesn't work, right? That's not going to work. So what do you do? What do you do? Here's what you do. You tell the person like this. Talk to the self-loathing within you and tell self-loathing that you are going to make an appointment, that you're going to make an appointment with it 3 times a day, right? That's at least how you start. 3 times a day, you're going to make an appointment with self-loathing, right? So you have self-loathing. So you tell self-loathing, listen, I'm going to sit with you from 10 in the morning to 10:15 in the morning. If you need a little more time, 10 to 10:20, okay? And we're also going to have a meeting again at 2 p.m. for 20 minutes. And then we're also going to have a meeting at 8 p.m. for 20 minutes, right? And then literally when that time comes, you sit there and you just let her rip, right? Say all sorts of whatever, all the negative things you want to say about yourself, do it during those 20 minutes. No problem. Great. But here's what happens, right? We have an appointment at 10, at 2, and at 8. Let's just say, right? You can make any times. 10, at 2, and 8. So if it's 4 o'clock and then a person, right, for the person, self-loathing starts to come up and I start getting all those voices in my head and I start really just wanting to say negative things about myself. You tell self-loathing, I see you there. Shh, I get you. Like, you're there. Okay. I know I'm right. I know you want to say negative things about me. And I know I want to say negative things about me because you're a part of me. But here's the thing, self-loathing. I have an appointment with you at 8 o'clock. Come back then. We'll do it all then. Right? So that's going to be much easier for the person to do. Now you've confined it. You've given it a space. You've confined it. You've given it a place to go. It knows it's going to be expressed, right? And therefore, it doesn't just take over all day long, right? So now, this is an aspect of mindfulness. The truth is we're getting a little bit deeper. We're getting more into deeper strategies. But what does it mean to say? It means to say I'm conscious of my emotions. I sense when certain things are coming up for me, right? And I'm able to kind of talk to it or deal with it or play around with it. And the more we become accustomed to doing this, the more we become a master over our midot instead of our midot being a master over us. Midot means characteristics and emotional intelligence. Okay? The more I'm able to take ownership of that, the more I'm able to be a free person and a growth-oriented person. right? Now I'm able to employ my characteristics and my strength for the good instead of just having it run over me whenever it chooses, right? Matter of fact, again, we said the word for this is midot in Hebrew. Midot literally means, on the one hand, it means characteristics, right? Character traits, the ways we emotionally respond. But also, literally in Hebrew, it means measurements. Measurements. Why? Because it needs to be measured out. You can have a good quality, a good trait that's used in an inappropriate way, to an inappropriate extreme, at an inappropriate time, right? Which means to say that a lot of these things are actually good at their core. The question is how we disseminate them, how we give them out there, when we give them out there, under what circumstances do we go ahead and use them and employ them. So that's where we have to become a master over ourselves, right? So there's a lot more to say, but for now, let's see if do we have anyone want to say anything, questions, thoughts, ideas. Nothing. Okay.
Hasta ahorita alguien
keep
tiene alguna pregunta, alguna duda de lo que ha dicho el Rab hasta ahorita.
Gracias.
No, it looks like everybody's
keep
understanding everything.
No, yo tengo una pregunta, Moshe.
Sí.
All right.
There is somebody that has, Raveli, there is somebody that has a question. Abraham.
Yes, okay. I have a question. You said that we need to change our nature, right?
Okay. Build a new nature.
Build a new nature.
Build a new way of being. Yes. Build a new way of being.
The one that we are born with, is it bad? Is it bad for us? Is it wrong to be that nature? I mean, we are born evil, and we need to convert and be a better person, or not necessary?
So it depends. We need to examine it. That's the point. We need to examine it and be involved in things consciously. It says in what's called Pirkei Avot, one of the rabbinical teachings, it says, Ezo Gibor, who is the strong person? HaKoveshet Yitzro, the one who conquers their inclination. What does that mean? That means that it doesn't even say good inclination or evil inclination. What it means to say is that inner strength in Judaism, okay, it's very nice a person could lift weights, and be strong, but the inner aspect of strength means that I have personal ownership over myself, right? That I'm in control. So it means to say that, like, I'm not running on autopilot, right? Because if I'm running on autopilot, if I don't have mastery over myself, so then sometimes it'll be good, like you're saying, sometimes it'll be good, but sometimes it'll be bad, right? And the point is that there's two aspects of it. Number one, even if it's good, like you're saying, even if let's say I'm raised wonderfully and I have a beautiful nature, I have a wonderful nature, and my parents were freaking awesome, never made any mistakes, never messed me up at all. I never had anything negative happen to me that would affect me in a negative way. Even if everything's great, if you're not being conscious, you're not living as a human being, right? You are a human being, that is your essence, but you're not living with the advantage of being a human being. You're not living in a state of consciousness and self-awareness and making choices from a place of personal freedom, right? So there's that aspect. So even if everything's great, there's an aspect of being a human being that involves being conscious and making free will choices. And also, in addition to that reason, fact of the matter is that, our nature is, we're going to have negative things that come up for us in our nature based on certain things that happen to us, right? If someone does, right, if someone does something that upsets you, right? Okay, that's coming from your nature, that in a particular situation, anger comes up for you, right? Or you have a certain vision about how you want things to be, and then that's not fulfilled by somebody else, or maybe a life partner or something like this. So then I just can't tolerate it, and it drives me crazy. And then how do I respond? So some people, there's two extremes, right? There's the extreme of anger and throwing things and rage. There's another extreme of just like, okay, I'm hiding and I'm insecure and I have self-consciousness, or I I'm just for whatever reason, not sharing the truth of my experience, right? Those are two extremes. So those extremes could come up for us in those situations. Are we being conscious to be able to work on that and to recognize where is that coming from? It's coming from a place of fear. Okay, so why am I responding to my fear in these particular ways, right? And so all of that stuff means we have to go inside of ourselves and become conscious and start asking questions to ourselves. Okay, when have I felt this before? Why did I respond? And it's not even important why I responded in this way, but is this the best way to respond? Is this who I want to be and how I want to be, right? So this is about improving our life, and improving our life also for the sake of ourselves and for the sake of others as well, who are around us and stuck with us, right? Number one, it's about being conscious, and number two, it's about being better. And it doesn't mean that every impulse you ever have is wrong, right? That's not what it means, but it means that there's probably a bunch of them that could use improvement. And even if you're perfect, you want to be, at least in Judaism, we want to be making conscious choices, right? Does that answer your question? Follow up?
Abraham te contestó la pregunta.
Yes, excellent. Thank you.
Cool. Cool. So it's important also to recognize what we mean by freedom, right? Because that's now that we kind of opened that box a little bit, because society has kind of taught us, I don't know if it's Hollywood or what have you, but we've been definitely gotten the message that if I were to ask your average person on the street, hey, what do we mean by freedom? Their response is going to be, freedom means you're free to do whatever you feel like doing whenever you feel like doing it, right? But what we're saying here is much deeper, because we're saying here is, hold on a second, if you just do whatever you feel like doing whenever you feel like doing it, can you hear the idea that there's an aspect of slavery in that, right? So just whatever comes up for you, you just go ahead and follow it as if your feeling is the master over you. There's something off about that. There's something childish and not refined and not developed about that, right? So what we're saying here is that freedom really means to free yourself from yourself, to get outside of that box, right? When I was growing up, so actually when my wife was growing up, she had a friend of hers, we'll call her Rebecca because that's her name. And Rebecca was but 11 years old when she heard about this cool thing called smoking. And so she figured, I've got to give it a try, right? So she has her first cigarette. What do you think? Did you like it? No, it tastes disgusting, right? She's 11 years old having a cigarette. But nevertheless, already at that age, she had the intelligence to recognize that smoking is one of those finer tastes in life that need to be acquired over time. So sure enough, she helps herself to another cigarette, another cigarette, another cigarette, another cigarette. And now fast forward 20 years later, maybe almost 30 years later, and Rebecca has gone from someone who's trying out a cigarette to a smoker, someone who smokes on a regular basis. Now, what do you think over the last 30 years? Has Rebecca tried to quit from time to time? So sure, of course she has, right? We know that quitting smoking is easy. Every smoker does it at least once a month, right? So anyway, but here we are. When she takes a cigarette today, would we say that this is an expression of her freedom? Right? No, I don't think so, right? Because really, the higher side of her wants to quit, but the lower side of herself keeps that going. But she's doing whatever she feels like doing whenever she feels like doing it. But you see how there's a slavery in that? She's doing whatever she feels like doing whenever she feels like doing it. She takes that cigarette whenever she wants. There's a flavor of slavery in that, right? On the contrary, my grandfather was 15 years old when he started smoking, and you can see all these pictures with him with a pipe, and he has a smoking jacket on and whatever, right? All his family kind of hated it for a while, right? But then one day, and my uncle started smoking a cigar. He enjoyed the taste of a cigar from time to time. But then one day, my grandfather was getting older. His health wasn't what it used to be. And in walks Uncle Elliot, right? The family's getting concerned. In walks Uncle Elliot, his ally in the family. He also appreciated cigars from time to time. But Uncle Elliot walks in, sits down. There's my grandfather. He's sitting with the newspaper in one hand, the pipe in the other. Uncle Elliot sits down right across from him and says, Dad, it's enough already. The smoking thing, it's enough. Your health ain't what it used to be. You've been smoking even a little more lately. Enough already. My grandfather, that moment, looked at my uncle, looked at the pipe, looked at my uncle, puts down the pipe, never picked it up again after 40 years of smoking, quit on the spot. True story. So a minute later, when imagine 2 minutes later, my grandfather feels again like he wants to smoke, and then he doesn't smoke, would we say that that is an expression of his freedom? I think we would, right? But he's not doing whatever he feels like doing whenever he feels like doing it, right? He's doing quite the opposite. He's freeing himself from that. He's becoming mindful in that moment, right? And so this is what we mean by mindfulness, and this is what Judaism is preaching all the time, is to exit your mind and enter the present moment. Exit your stories, exit your patterns, exit whatever that feeling is, and enter into the present moment without thinking, oh my gosh, am I gonna have to do this thing forever? Oh my gosh, what's going to be about this in the future? What if all the anxiety of the future, the depression of the past? Exit that, say, okay, hold on a second. Let me be in this moment. What is the best thing for me to do right now? Right? When we live like that from moment to moment, all of a sudden we turn around. The next Rosh Hashanah, we're different people than we were at the previous Rosh Hashanah, right? Where people, that's the only way we make personal change, is by staying in the moment, right? And the more we do that, the more we can take one day at a time, one moment at a time, right? A lot of us, we have a certain role that we play in our group of friends, right? Either we're like, I like to use myself as example, the sarcastic one, or at least that's how I used to be, and maybe still a little bit, but not as much anymore, right? And so it's like a lot of times, like there's a place for you to like say your little line, for you to say your little piece, for you to say your thing, for you to put in your little snide remark, or whatever it might be. And at some point, maybe decide, you know what, I don't want to play that role anymore in life, in my social circle. And what does that mean? That means in that moment, we stay conscious of who we want to be, of even maybe how we don't want to be, but more important, who we do want to be. And we catch ourselves in that moment and we say, you know what, I do not have to be this, play this role and play this character anymore. My inner voice is calling for me to do something different, for me to be something higher, for me to be something more refined, more dignified, living in a way of more integrity. And so let me stay in the moment. Forget about how I've been, forget about all of these things. And when we catch ourselves in the moment, we make a real change than what we would have been doing up until now. It's very weird because we feel like we're supposed to say something, or we're supposed to do something, or we should be like that the way we've been. But then when we're successful, we hold on to it and we don't do it. Oh, wow. I could do anything. I could be anything. I'm freer. I walk around from a higher place, right? And the more we do this, and the more we become people who are acting in a positive way, independent of how other people are acting around us, all of a sudden people start asking us questions about their lives. People start asking us questions. And why do they keep coming up to me and asking me questions? Why? Because they can tell there's something different about you. Because they can tell that you've mastered life because you've mastered yourself. Right? And this is the beginning. And this is the beginning of being a Jew. Right? This is before we even get to Judaism. Right? Because Judaism is going to say, listen, do this, do that. Don't do this, don't do that. But that means I have to have the emotional intelligence and have mastered the emotional skills and mastered over myself, you know, all the different things about me. If I'm not running the show over myself, so, you know, you give me the Torah, it says live in a certain way, but like, I don't even have control over myself. I don't have control over these different emotions and different characteristics within myself. It's not gonna work very well, right? And so it's funny that the truth is that this is the time of year that we're in now, from Passover to Shavuot, is a time we're working on that, right? Shavuot, that's coming up in a couple of weeks, is the holiday of getting the Torah. So before that, from Pesach, which is the holiday of freedom, and then until Shavuot, we're working on this idea of taking personal freedom and integrating it into our different characteristics and our different emotions, and becoming free in all these different aspects of our lives. And so it's good. It's definitely an apropos topic for this time of year, as far as Judaism is concerned. Okay, more questions. I know there was a request also that we do a little bit of a meditation, which I have not forgotten about. So we're going to do a little something, a little Baal Shem Tov meditation. Do we want to do that now? We want to take some questions first. Rabbi Moshe, what do we say?
So if anybody has any question that he wants to ask about what's mindfulness in the Jewish perspective, so they could do it now, or we could go into the meditation, and after maybe somebody has any questions, or because nobody wrote in the question and answer. So if you want any questions, it seems like not.
No questions.
Okay, so you want to go into
Sure. Okay, let's do it. You guys can hear me okay, right? I'm going to assume that's a yes. You guys can hear me? Moshe, Rabbi Moshe, give me a thumbs up. You hear me okay? Okay. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so I just want to, we'll do like a little bit of an intro minute of discussion in order to get to what we're going to do. Okay, so we're about to do a meditation that comes from the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov is the founder of Chassidut. And a very simple, basic meditation. And as we go through it, I'll be talking and explaining different things. So the first thing we have to understand is, and what we're going to focus on, is on this idea of being present in the moment, okay? And there's an idea and a principle, and we get a little bit philosophical just for half a minute here. In Judaism, of course, we believe that there's an infinite being running the show, that there's a God, right? And that means to say, though, that infinite being means outside of time, outside of space. But that means then that every moment in time is being willed into creation, willed into existence in this particular moment, right? At every moment. And so what we're going to do is we're going to step into that a little bit, okay? So let's go ahead, let's go to it, okay? So what we do is like this. We cover up our, I gotta move this, one second. Okay, we cover up our eyes for a second. Okay, and we say, first we take a deep breath for a second here. Okay, we say, what is Hashem, what is God creating at this very moment? What is God creating at this very moment? And so we put down our hands, we open our eyes, and we say, God is creating at this very moment our space. This is the space around me, right? God is creating our space. And so we recognize, we open up our eyes, we look around within a few feet of ourselves, within a couple of meters of ourselves. We recognize that this is all permeating. This is all alive with God willing it to be here right now. So a lot of times we fall into a state of not being conscious, a state of just, hey, this is all here. Hold on a second. This is being willed into willed into creation, willed into existence at this very moment. And we recognize that it's here for us. And it's our personal space that was created for us. Right? If you want to keep your eyes open, if you want to keep your eyes closed, either way is fine at this point. And so we just look around and just appreciate our surroundings, appreciate the fact that it's here and that it's here for us. Okay, so once again, we close our eyes once again. Put our hands up to our eyes. And we ask again, what is God creating at this very moment? What is God creating at this very moment? And so we answer, we take our hands down, and we answer that God is creating at this very moment our body. Our body. And so again, we recognize our body. And we start noticing, become conscious of, number one, that Hashem is permeating our body at every moment. And also could do a little body scan as well we start feeling the different things that usually fall to the background. The feeling of your clothes on your skin, the bottom of your feet touching the floor, different maybe sensations in your body, different little aches and pains and stiffness. And start recognizing that it's there. Being conscious of it. Being conscious of it. Why are we being conscious of it? Because the idea here is, one of the ideas, one of the goals, one of the aims, one of the things that are going to be accomplished if we make this a practice, is that we start to realize that we start to recognize and become conscious of all of these feelings, and that makes it that there's a little bit of a separation between us and those feelings. On the one hand, there's a connection that happens because we're conscious of it. On the other hand, we also realize that, like, hey, those feelings, the sensations, those physical sensations and physical feelings, I'm conscious of them, but that means that also it's not me. Right? It's there, it exists. It's good, I appreciate it. But it's separate. It's also kind of separate from me as well. And so then I start to become reflective about recognizing the difference between my body and I, myself. Okay, so I'll give you guys about 20 seconds to just be conscious, just to be conscious of our bodies and recognize the different feelings, the external feelings, which could be things like our foot touching the floor, different sensations, but then also our internal physical feelings. What's going on inside the body? Maybe if you have enough silence and stillness, you can also feel your heart beating or your blood pulsing. Okay, so next we close our eyes again. And we ask, what is Hashem creating at this very moment? What is God creating at this very moment? And so we take down our hands, we open our eyes, and we say, God is creating at this very moment my feelings. God is creating at this very moment my feelings. And so you can leave your eyes open or close them and just take a minute. We'll take a minute to experience whatever feelings come our way without fighting it, without resisting it, without interpreting it, without saying that it's good or bad or it should be one way or it should be another way. Just let it be. Recognize it. Be with it for a moment. Let it go. And again, what does this do for us? One thing that it does for us. Well, again, those same two things. On the one hand, we're going to be conscious of it instead of it just being something that's floating around in the background. And at the same time, also recognizing that, hey, the feeling isn't me. It comes, it goes. But I can also not be attached to that feeling. It can be there. I can observe it. I can be mindful of it. But that means also that it's not taking over. I can let it go. So I give it its space, allow it to exist without being owned by it. It's very powerful. If we can live that way, ultimately, it will be life-changing. Have you ever heard anyone say, I'm angry? Maybe you've said, I'm angry. Here the point is that we can feel, we practice in this way, we get to a place where we could say, I feel anger coming up for me. That's very different than I'm angry. Because I'm Ellie. I'm not angry. That's my name, Ellie. And you're who you are. Angry, I promise you, is not the name that you were given as a child. That's not your name. It's not your name. Then continue being you, and recognize if anger comes, let it go. Or don't let it go. Don't identify with it. It's not you. And so we become conscious of our feelings, and we stay in the moment with those feelings. And we let those feelings go, validating them along the way. Okay. Next, close our eyes once again. Maybe take a deep breath in and out. And we ask ourselves, what is God creating at this very moment? What is Hashem, what is the infinite creating at this very moment? So we take down our hands, we open our eyes, and we say, God is creating at this very moment my thoughts. God is creating at this very moment my thoughts. So again, we recognize that we have thoughts that come into our mind. And again, allowing them to exist as they are. They're not good, they're not bad, they're not right, they're not wrong. We're not going there right now. We're just being conscious of them. And as we're conscious of them, we also recognize that they are not us. And that's okay. We are us. Our thoughts are our thoughts. So we see it passing. We let each one exist on its own for what it is, without going down some rabbit hole with it. Just let it be. Without ascribing meaning to it, without interpreting it. Okay, next, cover our eyes once again. And of course, the point, by the way, a point of covering the eyes is to take a step back. Take a step back a little bit to non-existence. And then come forward and recognize the thing in a conscious way. And so we close our eyes once again, put our hands over our eyes. And we say, what is God creating at this very moment? What is God creating at this very moment? And so we open our eyes and we say, God is creating at this very moment my consciousness. God is creating at this very moment my consciousness. My consciousness, which allows me to observe my thoughts and my emotions, and allows me to be conscious of all of these things in a way of self-awareness, consciousness. So in a sense, we're being conscious of our consciousness. And recognizing that, being aware of that in this moment. And recognizing also where it's coming from and who it's coming from. Okay, one more time, one more. At this point, we close our eyes once again and we say, what is God creating at this very moment? What is God creating at this very moment? And so we open our eyes and we say, God is creating at this very moment my neshama. God is creating at this very moment my neshama, my soul. So we recognize the idea that this soul is what's powering. It's like the battery pack. It's powering the consciousness, the thoughts, the feelings. It's the life force for all of this. Our physical body, even space around us, is given to us and is an expression of the neshama, of the soul that we have. And so we can experience it coming into us from above us. We hold that space. Okay, so let's come down from this a little bit. Breathe a little bit, get your bearings, look around. Come back to earth, so to speak. Move around a little bit, maybe do some jumping jacks, stretch. Okay, so how was that for people? Or do we have questions about this or anything else?
That was beautiful, Rab. Thank you so much.
Thank the Baal Shem Tov.
Yeah, there's one question here. If someone has certain inclinations in his personality that are negative, what is the objective of changing it or just controlling?
I mean,
No,
there's
the objective is no. So the objective is to change it or to control it.
I mean, first things first. First things first is definitely to. First things first is look. If something's not working, something's not healthy. We don't want to be doing that for ourselves and for the people who are around us, right? A lot of times this is trauma-based. I don't know if we have time to talk about this now, but a lot of times these things are rooted in trauma and how and us being broken, and then because of that, we see things in negative ways that weren't intended, that aren't even negative. But sorry, I'm going off topic. Let's keep it on topic, right? The answer to your question is definitely we want to definitely in the long term, we want to change. We want to change it. I don't even know if it's it's not so much the long term. It's not that we want to change. It's not that we want to control it or change it. We want to replace bad responses with good responses, or decent responses with better responses, right? Because that's really what it is. A lot of times what it is a reaction that's automatic versus a response that's conscious and thought out. And it happens in a moment, right? It happens in a moment, right? My kid drops a dish and it smashes on the floor. That's a moment. Am I gonna turn and be annoyed with the kid for something that they did, that something that accidentally happened, or because they were a little careless or whatever, and they're gonna yell at the kid? Or am I going to be like, all right, that's what happens. That's part of the deal of having kids, is that there are gonna be some plates that are gonna break, and that's okay. And I don't need to make this a big deal. And it's just a plate, and the plate costs, and it doesn't even cost that much. And even if it did cost that much, so what? It's just a piece, just an object. Like that whole thing happens like that, right? And so we want to refine the way we respond, right? So the problem, I'll tell you what the problem with control, like we said, like first thing, right? It was, do I want to control it or do I want to change it? The problem with control is if I'm just controlling it, that means I'm still holding in that negative place. And I'm just like holding it down. So it's like, it's like a can of soda. I don't know how you say soda, and it's soda or a pop or whatever, I don't know how you call it in the Mexican version of English. But it's like if you take a can of soda, right, and you shake it up, like it's okay, you're controlling it, but like it's still there waiting to explode. It's gonna happen, right? What we want to do is recognize and then like shift the response. So I guess you have to say change, and right? But controlling is also good. If it's doing nothing versus control is good too. But we want it, but then still you're in a place of self-denial. You're like you have a feeling and you're denying it. So you're in this battle the whole time. And sometimes we need that in life, don't get me wrong. But that means you're still holding in the negativity. Even if you're stopping the negativity, it's like the Balatanya, one of the great Hasidic masters, said that like a lot of these books in Judaism, a lot of teachers in Judaism talk about, don't do this negative thing, don't do this negative thing, don't do this Yetzer Hara, don't do this evil inclination. You do that all day in your head, you're still holding in the world of evil inclination. Instead, how about like, let's do something positive, right? Let's change it. Like imagine, like, it's like this, ready? It's like when people want to control certain thoughts that they're having, right? They say, okay, listen, you ready? Don't think about a purple elephant, right? That's a classic example, right? So of course, what are you thinking about now? The purple elephant. The only way to do this, how are you going to think about something different, is if you proactively think about something different. The way you're not going to think about the purple elephant is by proactively thinking about something else, right? So it's the same thing over here. If I'm holding still in my negative trait, and I'm just stopping my negative trait and stopping anger, eventually that anger is coming out, and it's going to be kaboom at some point, right? Same thing, by the way, with the person has a different kind of negative response. If the person's always like being victimized by something and doesn't share their feelings in a good way and put up proper boundaries, etc., by sharing where they're at, and they just hold it back, try to put themselves down. I want to be the good wife. I want to be the good person. I want to, whatever, or I'm insecure. At some point that's coming out somewhere, right? Instead, I want to replace that with a more healthy way of being. So I guess I have to say change. But it's not change, like it's inner work that makes the change easy. It's not like okay, so now, right? And maybe I'm mind reading here a little bit into the question. Maybe this isn't the intent, but the intent that I'm feeling off the question is like, I don't really want to change. Change sounds hard. I can't see a way how I'm going to change. No. If we learn the tools to change and to recognize things within us and replace and recognize that, like, okay, normally I would act out with anger in a particular situation, but instead, you know what? I'm going to understand where that's coming from. Maybe I'll even understand why I want to why I act that way. And even without that, I'm going to say, you know what? This isn't effective here. I'm going to recognize that this doesn't work here. Forget about whether or not it's allowed in Judaism or whatever to react that way. Is not even our conversation. Is this serving you even? Is this the person you want to be? So I'm going to make an effort, and there's all sorts of different ways with different tools and being conscious, and you can have a mentor, you can have an accountability partner, whatever, all sorts of things. And I'm gonna hopefully little by little make changes about how I'm gonna be and how I'm gonna look at things. And it's something that with personal work is very, very doable, and a transition happens. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Rabbi Moshe?
Great. Somebody else has any questions?
Sí, yo. Hola, Moshe.
So hold on
Okay,
a second.
¿cómo
On the chat, just wait before the question. Hold on. Someone put on the chat, can you keep your eyes closed the whole time? You could keep your eyes closed the whole time if you want. I recommend opening it at least for a second, just because I believe that there's an idea there. This might just be my interpretation, but I believe that there's an idea there that when a person's closing their eyes at first, it's about like going to a place of non-existence, and then like opening to the new reality. You know, opening like, oh, this space is created from God. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's why I recommend opening the eyes. But if for whatever reason, if it works for you to close your eyes the entire time and not open at all, okay. So whatever works for you. There's no, whatever works for you is good. Sorry, go ahead. Was there another question?
Hi.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for your time, Rab. One quick question about a topic that you mentioned earlier, that you told us, when you get out, before you get into the halachas and the way of the Torah, we need to know ourselves, our minds, and we come from a home, good or bad home, Orthodox, not Orthodox. But when we get to that point, how can you merge it with the halachas and the Torah, which sometimes it doesn't make sense, and it happens a lot that there's an halakha that you just don't understand and your mind goes completely against it. How do you merge it?
So first, if we have ownership, well, you're talking, I don't know if necessarily you're talking about, you might be talking about two different things here. The idea that philosophically or culturally, your culture says one thing and Judaism says a different thing. That's a matter of like, for me, that's a matter of philosophical question. Why do I believe one thing to be true versus another thing to be true? Why do I believe in that Judaism is something that's actually real? That's how I heard your question. Emotionally, that is, those emotions will follow. If we have a certain like understanding or belief based on something, that, for example, Judaism is true. So then oftentimes the emotions will follow that. The emotions will follow that. I don't have to be right. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question in terms of what we're talking about here. Like, yeah, your mind is going to a place of like, let's say Judaism has one value and secular has another, contradicting thing that they view to be a value, a secular culture. When we have ownership over ourselves, we're able to like recognize, like, okay, they believe one thing, I believe, or Judaism believes another thing. If I believe in Judaism, that belief will overcome the other belief. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question. I don't know if this answers your question well. Maybe you want to just say a little bit more? Or?
No, I got a really good answer. Thank you very much.
Does that make sense? That's okay?
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. What else we got here, my friends?
¿Alguien más tiene alguna pregunta, alguna duda que quisiera preguntar en vivo o en chat?
Ay, yo, Moshe.
Yo también,
Ana.
Moshe, cuando se pueda.
Okay.
Ana, vas.
Sí. First of all, thank you very much. The meditation was amazing. So my question is, up to what point get free from ourselves can be really effective? Like not going any further.
What do you mean by that?
Like, I don't know, maybe making bad decisions or just like go further to our own freedom,
I think so. So it depends. It depends. The goal here, see, we have to be careful. Like like I said before, we do have to be careful about what we mean by freedom, right? Freedom doesn't mean that, like, okay, I'm going to just do whatever I feel like doing whenever I feel like doing it, right? That's not the goal. The goal is to come to a place where I'm going to choose, I'm choosing good things, and I'm not owned by my instincts. I'm not owned by my just because an emotion comes up for me doesn't mean I have to act it out, right? I don't have to have unbridled, but that what it doesn't mean that we have unbridled self-expression, right? But it doesn't mean that like I'm so free from different thoughts that I have, or free from what society's telling me. So like, you know, I want to walk around with no clothes on, so I'm just going to walk around with no clothes on. Who cares what anybody else says? That's not what we're saying here, right? What we're talking about is just simply not being owned by these things. We then we want to go ahead and make good decisions, right? Which is what Judaism is trying to is talking about when we say, on the one hand, that like we have a idea of leaving the Egypt of our life, but then we have a purpose and a goal, which is to go to the promised land, right? So what we want to do is we want to, step one, yes, we want to be able to come to a place within ourselves that I could do anything, but then we want to go on a quest and say, okay, so what's worth doing? You hear what I'm saying?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Si quieres te
Welcome.
la hago por aquí, Moshe, en español. Y me la
A
traduces.
ver, a ver.
Mi pregunta es que yo tomé varias cosas de mindfulness, pero todas las meditaciones se concentra uno en la respiración de nariz, inhalar y exhalar por nariz, y estar consciente, y si vienen pensamientos, no concentrarte. Muy parecido a lo que dijo, pero no dijo él nada de la respiración. No sé si aquí no se toma en cuenta esto.
Okay, so Rob, I don't think you understood, Robert.
Sorry.
So the question was that somebody's asking that she's very into mindfulness, and mindfulness is very into the respiration, like breathing
Okay.
in, breathing out.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
this meditation, she didn't feel it.
Okay, yeah, I didn't do much of it. Also, I have, yeah. Okay, that's fine. I mean, yeah, I didn't do much of that, and so that's okay. Breathing is an aspect of it, and sometimes I choose to do without breathing. If I knew that there was someone here who wanted breathing, I would have thrown in some breathing. Would you like a breathing exercise? We can do one right now if you like.
No,
Should we do one?
No, it's okay. What I didn't understand is maybe that is different, that you don't have to be so aware about your breathing. That's what I'm.
No, breathing
like.
is good. Breathing is good. I find that sometimes people have trouble with breathing, and so if we're doing a one-time thing,
Okay.
first, so I just try to keep it simple a little bit. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of different traditions from also, I assume, from the Baal Shem Tov, but also just different Mikubalim, different Kabbalists within Judaism, that have all sorts of different traditions within breathing, stomach, chest, and also actually brain, which is interesting enough how that works. But which correspond, for example, to different aspects of the soul, which in Hebrew is nefesh, ruach, and neshama. And so, and with visualizing Hebrew letters or different words and things like this in Hebrew. So there's definitely those traditions within Judaism. But okay, so we didn't do that this time. So
okay. No, thank you very much. You can,
yeah.
if we can do it again one more time. It's the first time that I hear it by Judaism, and I like it very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. I'm glad we're here together. Thank you for having.
Before, if we know somebody else wants to ask a question, we want to thank you, Rabbi, because we know now in Israel, you start your class at 4 a.m.
Wow.
And it's not usual to do it. So thank you so much for doing it for us here from Mexico. And it really, your knowledge, your humility, I don't know, but when I knew you last year, that was something very special about you. So I personally want to thank you to being here with us at this time.
Okay, thank you so much for the kind words. And Seder, anytime it's anytime to speak to a wonderful group and wonderful people such as yourselves. I'm happy to do it any time of the day or night.
Thank you, Robert. Somebody else has any questions?
Thank you, really. Thank you very much. It was great.
Pleasure. Hopefully we could do it again sometime soon.
Yes, Bezrat Hashem.
So thank you, Raveli. Thank you so much. Yoshua, you want to say something?
Rab, thank you so much. It was very special, and thanks for this opportunity. I hope we can do it again, Bezrat Hashem. And thank you. Chazako Baruch.
Pleasure. Thank you for having. Glad we were able to work it out.
Thank you so much. Thank you too.
Gracias a todos.
Gracias a todos por conectarse y cualquier pregunta o duda, conéctenos. Thank you, Raveli. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Be well.
Bye.